Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the West Louisville Forum, the virtual edition. We'll get started coming up here in a bit. Today, it's going to be a wonderful conversation building off the announcement made on Monday at a press conference, which signified a uniting of Kentucky's two HBCUs. Today in conversation will be President of Simmons College of Kentucky, Dr. Kevin Cosby, and President of Kentucky State University, Dr. Christopher Brown. So don't go anywhere, share this broadcast, and we are getting ready to have a powerful conversation. Hey, welcome to the West Louisville Forum, the virtual edition brought to you by our friends over there at Park Community Credit Union. We thank you so much for being such a strong partner in this community. Hey, speaking of partnerships, today it is going to be a candid and engaging, educated conversation between Simmons College of Kentucky President Dr. Kevin W. Cosby and the President of Kentucky State University, Dr. Christopher Brown. On Monday, we went public in a press conference talking about the partnership after Kentucky's Governor Andy Beshear, mentioned K-State and Simmons College as partnering together to create a pipeline for Black teachers. We'll talk all about it in this conversation today, but real quick, before we start, we want to share with you this powerful video, which talks about why such partnerships as this is essential to right now.
Look at this right now. If this isn't a wake-up call for the United States of America, we need a gut check on what we think our country is. The messages and the protests that are taking place right now. 400 years have led up to this frustration that won't be contained anymore. And it's coming to a boil all across the United States right now. Speaking out for justice and speaking out for truth about things that have been way too damn long in coming.
In Louisville, this is not just about George Floyd. This is about a woman named Breonna Taylor who also lost her life.
March 13th, 2020. This will be a date that will stay etched in the hearts and minds of people throughout our city. In the early hours of this clear but cold night, a team of narcotic officers were about to make a decision that would shake our city.
911, Operator Harris, where is your emergency?
I don't know what's happening. Somebody kicked in the door and shot my girlfriend.
Okay, where are you located?
We were hearing that 911 call from Breonna Taylor's boyfriend.
Oh my God.
Can you get her turned over on her back?
Around 12:42, March 13th, EMS is flooded with calls from neighbors reporting gunfire.
There was a lot of gunshots. Y'all need to get over here. They're shooting out like crazy.
The police shooting that resulted in the death of an EMT.
In a time of COVID, she was an essential worker, the kind of person that you and I would rely on if the worst happens and we got sick.
The mother of Breonna Taylor.
I was more concerned with her washing her hands than dying at home.
They took like a big part of our life away from us.
Loved ones of Breonna Taylor grieving and outraged.
This should have never happened.
This is a tragedy that nobody wanted to see happen, and for that, I'm truly sorry that it did take place.
In the midst of a pandemic, they had taken the life of a young, bright, frontline worker, an EMT, one of the very roles we solely depended on.
These photos show the damage caused by the police after they entered the apartment with a search warrant and fired more than 20 rounds. Taylor was hit at least 8 times.
We have no assurance of how long investigations will take.
Now here we are in a city, Louisville, Kentucky, that history we will remember because of the execution of Breonna Taylor. And it was an execution.
When the picture of the 26-year-old started circling social media, dressed in her EMT uniform, proudly holding a diploma, people started to listen and question why she died.
It brought to my mind what were the contributing factors that led to this incident. We found out there were actually 5 no-knock search warrants issued at a totally different address. Interestingly enough, on Elliott Avenue in West Louisville. And I said, I'm going to go and just see what this house looks like. I'll never forget, I turned down the street and I began to see this whole block, and it was like just the first glance as an eerie feeling that came over me. House after house after house boarded up. And as I looked at the blight on that block, the word neglect, it's a glaring neglect. And it's not that the residents have neglected, it's that the city has not provided the opportunities for transformation. Yet there is mention of surveillance that had taken place. I said to myself, it's just crazy that we could spend the money to put a camera up on a pole and have officers monitoring the street. Everybody's looking at the street, but no one has lifted the street.
On a deeper level, the killing of Breonna Taylor and the reverberating effects of protests, riots, violence, and death exposes major contradictions within city governments across our nation, because police departments are called upon to maintain order in a social and economic system where the wealthy and poor have competing interests. Policing comes to mean addressing the problems bothering the wealthy and powerful and targeting the poor and Black.
If we get distracted on solely looking at what the police have done, and we do not pay attention to the economic disinvestment, then we have really missed the ultimate causation.
We need economic democracy. Too few people have too much, and too many have virtually nothing. As we seek to overcome racial separation, class division is now haunting us. You'll bet with me for a minute. It says self-respect and not self-degradation matters. Self-respect must be more important than a dollar. dignity more important than a dollar.
This tree has different branches, and on one branch can be crime, on another branch could be drug abuse. But really, when it comes to economically distressed communities, those are symptoms. The real issues start in the root system. The fact that she was shot, you could easily say it's a police issue. Well, really, what happened to her directly reflects the roots.
For the last several months, this Commonwealth has been dealing with the pandemic that has laid bare and put on full display our society's inequalities and injustice. This display hasn't been in words or theories, it's been in death. Our society's inequalities span over 400 years of slavery, segregation, Jim Crow, and overt and implicit racism. Our symbol, Lady Justice, is supposed to be blind, but many in our state feel, rightfully so, that color is all that's seen. And the incidents from Louisville with Breonna to Minneapolis show it is very real. In my short time as governor, I've had individuals try to create fear and terror in my own family. But that's been a few days, maybe a week, certainly not a lifetime. I will never understand how it feels to carry the frustration and fatigue of racism in a world and a country that has failed to address it in a meaningful way. But I can listen to others describe it. I can learn from that experience, and I can do as governor whatever I can to help.
Some Louisville faith leaders today are demanding that LMPD suspend and prosecute the officers involved in the deadly shooting of Breonna Taylor.
Bottom line is, we do not believe that these officers should get by with what they have done without accountability.
President of the IMC, Dr. Frank Smith, along with other faith leaders, believe if the officers had used other strategies when serving the no-knock search warrants, Breonna Taylor would still be alive.
So you have this level of an economic injustice that impacts blacks. Our tax dollars are funding the pay of officers like these, you know, from a distressed community. How many houses so far? 1, 2, 3, 4. Empty, vacant lot, overgrown. Forgotten about, forsaken. Elliott is a reflection of so many other streets in Louisville, so many other streets in urban cities around this nation. The same thing, where there has been a decision to put cameras on a pole, law enforcement, rather than let's deal with transforming this neighborhood. You see all of this, we have upon us an opportunity to say, if we're going to talk about surveillance of a community, then we need to use the surveillance that we have and say, oh, what I see is what I have not seen. What I see is what I have neglected.
Welcome to the virtual edition of the West Louisville Forum, brought to you by our friends over at Park Community Credit Union. And today's conversation is a Black United Front possible? The power of collaboration. Real quick, thank you so much to our amazing video team at Simmons College of Kentucky for producing that powerful piece. And that piece actually features our executive vice president and leader of the Kernel Commission 2 initiative, Dr. Frank Smith. So let's get right into the conversation. Today's conversation will feature President of Simmons College of Kentucky, Dr. Kevin W. Cosby, and President of Kentucky State University, Dr. Christopher Brown II. Welcome, Presidents.
Thank you. Thank you. So good to be in the presence of Dr. Brown once again.
Good to be here, Doc.
All right. Well, today you all are joined together as a united front. And real quick, I just want to share this quote. It says, "So powerful is the light of unity that it can illuminate the whole earth." And definitely our world, our earth needs some illumination. And that illumination on this part of the country is coming via Simmons College and Kentucky State University. In a press conference on Monday, you highlighted a partnership. And that was kind of, Dr. Chris Brown shared this story during the press conference, how he first heard about this during the press conference, during the speech of Governor Andy Beshear, how he was interested in partnering Kentucky's only two HBCUs, Simmons College and Kentucky State University, in a partnership that would be the pipeline for Black teachers. So real quick, let's talk about the partnership between Simmons College and Kentucky State University, why it is essential, and we'll just take it from there.
Well,
Dr. Brown, you want to go first? Or
well, certainly. Thank you again for having me. Excited about all the work that's happening in Louisville and across the Commonwealth. This is an exciting time because the reality is that the need for educational access, equity, and outcomes, the actual impact of what happens to students after college is needed more than ever before. And for those who are from disenfranchised and sometimes disengaged populations, that becomes even more important. Historically, Black colleges throughout history have played that role of being an economic equalizer, a social equalizer. And so for two institutions on differing sides of I-64 to partner to serve the entire Commonwealth, I think is just a great, great opportunity.
Well, again, I am beyond words excited about the potential of two institutions coming together. The health and vitality of the Black community is based on the health and vitality of the institutions that the community has. If you want to know what is different about the Black community from the white community, it is that the Black community, to some degree and to a great degree, has been deinstitutionalized. When you go in Black communities like West Louisville, you see a lack of indigenous institutions that the community actually owns. The economy of West Louisville is controlled by people who do not live in West Louisville. So there is a form of colonialism that takes place in Black communities. You will not find a white community in America in which the economy is controlled by Blacks. It is controlled in the white community by the white community. That can't be said for Black communities. So if the Black community is going to survive, we have to have strong indigenous institutions that are lifting the community. And historically, those institutions include strong churches, our faith institutions, churches, mosques, strong businesses, strong media. Like what we're doing now is the resurrection of Black media. So strong media, strong families, and then finally, strong educational institutions. And to have Kentucky State to have a presence, a strong presence in Louisville, and collaborating to impact higher education across the state, I think is going to have a tremendous impact on the outcomes that Dr. Brown talked about. And I think you have to have basically three things in order for there to be a Black United Front. And we have not worked out all the details, but there are 3 H words that are absolutely essential for collaboration. And those 3 H words is, first of all, hearts. If you can get the hearts of Black people together, our hearts together, and the hearts have to be hearts in which we are burdened about the state of Black America, that it is a burden to us. And if it's a burden to our hearts, then that's the first step towards collaboration. The second H word is heads. If you can, first of all, get the hearts together, and Dr. Brown, his heart is with Simmons before he became the president of Kentucky State. He has always made himself available. He has always reached out to me with a heart and concern about Simmons. I've spoken at Kentucky State. He invited our band to come up. We didn't get to come up, but he invited our band to come up to be showcased at Kentucky State. So he has a heart, and he has a heart for Simmons because ultimately he has a heart for Black people. And then you bring, after your hearts are together, you bring your heads together. His team of scholars and my team of scholars come together, and we think we structure something that can help us do something together that we could never do independent of each other. So we are in fact stronger together. So you have hearts, heads, and then the final H word is hands. We get our hands busy lifting the Black community, lifting the states. Now we are both preachers. And whenever you look at the Apostle Paul's strategy for reaching the world, he always started in the metropolitan areas. He always started in the cities, and then it would spread beyond. So to have Kentucky State and such a brilliant man, a visionary man as Dr. Christopher Brown, and Kentucky State partnering in Louisville, I think is going to be transformative.
I want to add, if I can just, Chris, before you go, I want to pick up there because I think Dr. Cosby positioned us for an important point that should not be forgotten, even as he and I partner with hearts and heads, which are the two parts. Before we get to that third part, we should never forget, as he mentioned, being clergy, that Ecclesiastes said that two are better than one.
Yes, sir.
They have good reward for their toil. And if they fall, that one can lift up the fellow. But he says, if they do this, he said, but if someone is alone, someone could come against them and prevail. He said, but two people them off. But he said that third piece, which people miss, he says a threefold cord,
yes, sir,
is not easily broken. And so as we put our hearts and our heads together, one of the pieces that did come out of the Monday press conference was the opportunity for other partners to join as the third cord for financial infusion, economic support, sustainability, and development.
Well, that is powerful. It's like we are having church on a Wednesday afternoon. If you're just now tuning in, welcome to the West Louisville Forum, brought to you by Park Community Credit Union. And might we add that Park Community is the exclusive, it is the only official credit union for the state's only two HBCUs. Hey, today's topic is is a Black United Front possible? The power of collaboration, and we are speaking to the presidents of Kentucky's only HBCUs, Dr. Kevin Cosby, president of Simmons College of Kentucky, and Dr. Christopher Brown, president of Kentucky State University. Dr. Christopher Brown, real quick before we get back into the conversation, tell our viewers in Louisville a little bit more about you. And Dr. Cosby said you're a pastor too. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Interesting. So I'm a native of Charleston, South Carolina, and came to Kentucky years ago on a Greyhound bus to get a graduate degree at University of Kentucky. At that time, I was a member of Consolidated under Reginald Van Stevens, and met Pastor Cosby early in the 90s. He may not recall when we came to Louisville. I've never forgotten the name, and many years later, after getting my doctorate, becoming a president, joined the Southern University system. We saw Dr. Tolbert on Monday. Dr. Tolbert joined the board at Simmons. I was still in Baton Rouge. And he said, we got a college in NBCA that we really want to make sure gets accredited and move forward. And when I was in Baton Rouge, flew up to Louisville to meet with Simmons to make sure that everything was moving forward as they pursued becoming the nation's most recent historically Black college as designated by the federal government. And so when I moved to Kentucky, the partnership and relationship was already there. And it's very important to remember that our institutions were founded on a specific mission, and that was to provide educational access in the region and the community, but particularly for the descendants of the enslaved Africans on the continent. And so that's very, very important. And so when an institution has common mission, it becomes easier for them to find common cause. And I think that's what has been the case. I think both institutions, though we're one's public, one's private, one's semi-rural, one's urban, our job is to make sure that the descendants of the former enslaved Africans in the Commonwealth in particular have access to high quality education that translates into jobs, economic sustainability, and a high quality of life.
Dr. Brown spoke about that Kentucky State is semi-rural, but its tentacles stretch far beyond Frankfurt.
Oh, yeah.
I have been in Louisville all my life. I'm a native of Louisville, and I went to college in the state of Kentucky. And one thing that has always disturbed me was the lack of institutional presence that Kentucky State should have had in Louisville. I mean, when you think about it, if you live on the far outskirts of Jefferson County, you're probably closer to Kentucky State if you live in the far outskirts of Jefferson County than you are perhaps to the Simmons campus on 18th and Dumania. So Kentucky State is not very far geographically from the city of Louisville. But why it's not far geographically, I think historically, it has been psychologically, institutionally speaking, thousands and thousands of miles away. And I've always wondered why Kentucky State, with all of this intellectual capital, and when you consider all of the problems and challenges that the Black community has in Louisville, that the first resource for addressing these ills was not Kentucky State, and especially since Simmons at the time was not an accredited institution. And I believe that there was a deliberate attempt by those in power to exclude Kentucky State from having the influence that it needed to have in Louisville, Kentucky. And I think that our city would be much richer had we used Kentucky State as a resource to address some of the ills that our city faces. Higher education can be very competitive and very cutthroat. There's a scarcity mentality quite often among presidents. I know that I have faced that. And I was very naive, Dr. Brown, becoming the president of Simmons. I took the ethics of the pastorate into the presidency. And as a pastor, you just think that you want to see people saved, and you celebrate as a pastor whenever someone's life is transformed. But I soon was awakened to the fact that higher education is a multi-billion-dollar business, and that quite often institutions have a zero-sum game mentality. And I cannot tell you how many roadblocks were put in my way by other presidents of universities and colleges who were right here in the city. I mean, there was a spirit of discouragement, but we were resolved and determined and courageous enough to keep on pursuing accreditation and ultimately the HBCU status. You know, it took us from 2005 until 2013 to secure accreditation. We were late 2013, we were accredited. April of 2015, we received the designation of a historically Black college and university. And there was not one foundation, not one, who assisted us in achieving this goal of accreditation in HBCU state. Not one foundation, zero. We did what we did the old-fashioned way, the same way that many HBCUs were built and sustained. We did it through nickels and dimes of the church members. The members gave their money. The members engaged in sweat equity and gave their expertise. But the foundations did not give us the money. It was not until after we had achieved accreditation that many of the foundations said, oh my God, they've done it, it's legitimate. And you know, it's just to have you in Louisville, Kentucky, and what you're going to bring to our city, and together what we're going to do, I think is going to be quite impactful.
As it relates to this, the notion of focus and place, it is the reality that people have misunderstood historically the distance or the space between two places. And so in Frankfurt, because we are geographically a few miles closer to Lexington, the campus and the community, I think, has traditionally looked eastward. And so even in some of social groups, like even fraternities or sororities, there will be joint Lexington, Frankfurt chapters of a group. But even though we are geographically closer to the city of Lexington, we are culturally and ideologically closer to the city of Louisville. And so even though if you placed a body in Lexington and a body in Frankfurt, but the body in Lexington is leaning backward, trying not to be touched, you're trying to hit an object that has a fixed distance. But if you have a body in Frankfurt and a body in Louisville, who are both leaning forward towards each other, the distance may be shorter because the arms are outstretched than they are when somebody doesn't want to engage you. And I think that you're correct. Over the years, we've had a number of partnerships that were designed or focused on the Lexington community or institutions in Lexington that have not been profitable for Kentucky State. We have, over the last 3 years, renewed those same initiatives in the Louisville market, and they have been generating great fruit, great excitement, great enthusiasm. And so for the want of an additional 8 miles or 10 miles, I think we have lost traction on what could be meaningful synergy between Frankfurt and Louisville.
All right.
Speaking about a powerful synergy, let's get down to the letter of intent that was signed following the press conference on Monday. And I'll just read a few parts of this agreement. Basically, the collaboration came as a response to Governor Andy Beshear's call that both Kentucky State University and Simmons College of Kentucky lead in recruitment and training for Black teachers. Pieces of the agreement include exploring the development of an articulation agreement that would allow associate degrees from both institutions to transfer into bachelor degrees, academic programs of other institutions, as well as for Simmons College of Kentucky students and K-State students, creating a joint initiative to educate the Commonwealth on the value and contributions of historically Black schools and universities, asset mapping and philanthropic endowment enhancement, collaborating on career placement for institutional alumni, designing joint faculty development opportunities, and also other activities that promote cultural enrichment and shared athletic events. Talk about the collaboration, and Dr. Cosby, how do you see all of this unfolding?
Well, I want my kid, eventually as Simmons grows and we develop multiple departments, we will be able to send our kids to grad school at Simmons College. You know, I don't know if I will see all of that in my lifetime during my tenure, but we're moving in that direction. But there are some unique and distinctive offerings that Kentucky State has that we should be able to take advantage of. I want my kids to go to an HBCU because the data shows that kids who attend HBCUs not only get a quality of education, but they also get an important consciousness so that they know that they have a moral responsibility to help lift the Black community. They are supposed to do what Du Bois told us to do, the talented tenth. Those who are strong, the Bible says, must use their strength to help lift those who are less strong. And that's what Du Bois said. And so I want my kids to be infused with a consciousness for the Black community, a love for the Black community, as well as much needed ethnic armor, so that when they move out into the workforce, that their ethnic armor will cause them, their hearts and minds, to be able to absorb all of the racist microaggressions that they will experience in the workforce. I do want to say that I want to thank God for Governor Andy Beshear, because in my opinion, he is the best governor. And in fact, I'll expand that to say that in 6 months, he's done more progressive things for the Black community, I think, than any elected official in my lifetime. I mean, I can't tell you how mortified I am to have to go into the Capitol and to see that statue, all these many years of Jefferson Davis. I mean, here is a man who was not only committed crimes against humanity by owning people, but he took up arms against the United States and tried to destroy. He was a traitor to the United States. And because of the lost cause mythology that valorized evil men like Jefferson Davis, there was a statue. It is Andy Beshear in 6 months got that statue torn down. And so it's been removed. My hope is that he will put in another Davis in the place of Jefferson Davis. And that Davis is Georgia Davis Powers. And that is because Jefferson Davis was on the wrong side of the Civil War, and Georgia Davis Powers was on the right side of civil rights. So in terms of the actual collaboration, to be able to have articulation agreements for me, in terms of my recruiting of students, to be able to say, you know, that what we do not have at Simmons College, Kentucky State is just a stone's throw away. We've got vans, we've got buses that is transporting you from the campus of Simmons to Kentucky State to take these particular classes. I mean, after all, we've got articulation agreements with the University of Louisville. We have articulation agreements with Campbellsville University that has a presence in Louisville. Campbellsville University, which is further from Louisville than Kentucky State is, has an actual presence in Louisville, Kentucky. So if Campbellsville, which is a private college, has a presence, why can't Kentucky State? So the articulation agreements. And also, one of the things that is missing in Louisville is Black college culture. You know, Black college culture makes a tremendous difference in a city, not just the academics, but for kids to see Black presidents, Black department heads, Black bands, Black step teams, the Kappas, and having a step show in West Louisville with the fraternities and sororities of Kentucky State and Simmons College are putting on a step show. I mean, that can be huge for our city. You don't have that. There's, you know, you've got 26 and Broadway, you've got Nulu, but the only thing that's happening in West Louisville in terms of where Black people can congregate is where David McAtee was killed. And that's our Zulu. You got in East Louisville, you've got Nulu, well, we got Zulu, and that's it. So to be able to have Kentucky State in Louisville, the Urban League has built a wonderful track, or is building a wonderful sports facility in deep West Louisville. And I told the president several years ago that my dream was that we would have the Lewis Coleman Invitational Track Meet. And of course, Lewis Coleman, I think, went to Kentucky State and was a stellar athlete at Kentucky State. Wow. And he operated out of Frankfurt and pastored in Louisville. And to have a track meet where the two institutions and other perhaps colleges like Wilberforce or Central State or some of the colleges that are in our vicinity, to do something like that in West Louisville will do more to attract Black kids in West Louisville. It creates new aspirational role models that our kids so desperately need, that have been taken out of the Black community due to integration. And when I was a kid, you had Muhammad Ali, who lived around the corner from me. You had Martin Luther King's brother, who lived down the street from me. You had F.G. Sampson, who preached the sermon, The Audacity of Hope. And Obama took that sermon and wrote a book called The Audacity of Hope. You had all these brilliant Black professionals in the Black community that left with the Jeffersons and have left the Evans and the masses of Black people behind, which I think is at the root of the protest. There's no pathways, very few aspirational role models in the Black community, and you need them back. And my dream is I can see Kentucky State and Simmons doing that in West Louisville, and I think we can become a model for the nation.
Amen to that.
Yeah, I want to pick up and amen and reify each of those in the 3 points that they were brought. First, the notion of, and it's so interesting, that's confirmation. I was just thinking about drive-in education this morning. I was just thinking about bus drive-in education this morning, because at Southern University in Baton Rouge, they did it for years. There would be buses to the rural communities and other parts of Louisiana, and they would pick up the collegians in the morning to the campus of Southern for commuter purposes, and then drive them back in the evening. There's a lot we could do in that regard. Second, you mentioned asset mapping and philanthropic development. That's critically important. I served as executive director at the United Negro College Fund. Most people really don't know what the United Negro College Fund is. All they know is a mine is a terrible thing to waste. But what happened in 1944, Frederick Patterson, who was at that time president of Tuskegee, had gone to Rockefeller to raise some money and said, hey, Tuskegee needs some money. And the head of Rockefeller says, the guy from Hampton was just here last week asking for money. Then somebody from Morehouse was here 2 weeks ago asking for money. Now you're here asking for money. He said, can't you all, we of course, culturally we have problems with the you people language today, but at that time, he said, can't you all get together and decide what you need and then come, we can write one check and you can figure it out. And Fred Patterson in 1944 wrote a letter to the Pittsburgh Courier calling for a United Negro College Fund, where everyone would give money to one fund on behalf of all of the historically Black colleges, and that fund would then divide the money out. So he said it was easier than Rockefeller or Ford or Mellon having to meet, or now it would be Gates, having to meet with all 100 plus. You could send one and we could divide it out. And so I think this notion of enhanced shared philanthropic fundraising is a critical opportunity. But last, I do feel for Louisville in this loss of Black college culture that Pastor Cosby speaks about, because a part of any thriving Black middle class and healthy experience across the South and the Midwest is a Black college encounter. Louisville is the only Southern city that does not have a Black college classic. Even Memphis has the Southern Heritage Classic. Everyone, if they don't have HBCUs, they import them in. Even Midwest cities have classics. Indiana has the Black Expo and the Indiana Circle City Classic. Gary, Indiana has its classic. Chicago, Detroit, even Hopkinsville, Kentucky. Even Hopkinsville, Kentucky has a HBCU classic, and Kentucky State plays Lane College from Memphis. So it's really a travesty that Louisville has not seized the economic impact. They can just look at the data from CIAA or Southern Heritage or Circle City and see what those classics mean in terms of hotel, dining, revenue, travel, and impact. So I think Dr. Cosby is correct. The opportunity to center that would be critical. I remember years ago, when I came to my first Derby, I was very, very fortunate. I came to receive the Isaac Murphy Image Award in education. Myself, Danny Glover received Isaac Murphy Awards the same year. And in the midst of Derby, other than the Oaks, there was sort of a Black cultural context, but that's a context within a context. But when you go to Circle City or Southern Heritage or CIAA or Essence, those are contexts in and of themselves that are transformative for those communities.
Absolutely.
Wow. Well, Dr. Brown, Dr. Cosby has beat the pavement and has tried to drill into the city of Louisville the importance of HBCUs. And Dr. Brown, you even mentioned in your speech during the press conference how you often have to defend the value of HBCUs. Talk about that. Why do you feel that America or that America devalues the power of HBCUs?
I want to be fair to the nation too. I think this is a Kentucky problem. I think America has its own mixed issues on race, but most Southern states have quickly discovered that, which speaks to even President Trump's mass infusion of funds into the HBCU sector, that this is a population of institutions that can decrease your prison population, increase your tax revenues in a state, increase business and entrepreneurship, increase jobs. If Simmons College did not exist, there are at least 100 people who would not be working in the city of Louisville. And so these campuses are economic engines, transformative for communities in which they can't necessarily just drop a Toyota or a Ford plant. And so many states are using these campuses in dynamic ways. HBCUs are a huge part of the way North Carolina plans its work, how Louisiana, Texas, Delaware plan their work. They're at the table. Kentucky, for some reason, has never wanted to acknowledge its complex history on the issue of slavery, on the issue of Confederacy. You know, it's a state that will not say whether it was a Confederate state or not. It'll say a part of the state was Confederate, but the other half was Ohio Regiment. So it does not want to confront where it is. It avoided, even up until this very day, engaging in Title VI desegregation. So every other Southern state has a clear plan to say, this is our HBCU, these are the areas where we failed, and this is, Dr. Cosby's word would be reparation, but the law would say just compensation for where they were underfunded and valued. Even Maryland is now proposing, I think, a $300 or $500 million infusion into their HBCUs. Mississippi did a $508 million infusion. Louisiana did it. Tennessee did it. Tennessee merged the University of Tennessee, Nashville into Tennessee State as a part of its record. Kentucky has not acknowledged sort of that history. And so they have a resource that could be used in a number of areas for the well-being of the state that they just haven't tapped in. I think to Dr. Cosby's prior point, it is interesting, as I said, whenever the nation has these problems, they say, well, HBCU, shouldn't you be fixing them? And I think that this is a similar moment for the Commonwealth, where the Commonwealth is like, if we don't do something, we may have pandemonium on our hands. So let's raise up these two institutions that we've not talked about previously and ask them to engage in the work of helping to resolve these social challenges.
Wow. Dr. Cosby, I seen you nodding your head all along. Go on and jump in there.
Well, part of the challenge for white America is to rethink what we must do with Black America. Until we can get it out of our heads that the goal is to make Black people dark-colored white people, you're always going to try to engage in a form of Anglo-conformity. So when I became president of Simmons, since Louisville has not had, well, we've had, Simmons never closed. So Simmons is 141 years old. And at one time, for 51 years, it was one of the premier private colleges, Black colleges in America. Of course, as Dr. Brown said, the United Negro College Fund was not formed until 1944. Interestingly enough, one of the founders of the United Negro College Fund was Charles Parrish Jr.
That's true.
And Charles Parrish Jr., founder, and Dr. Brown, you know that, who was the son of Charles Parrish Sr., the last president at Simmons College before it closed as a university. And so we had a thriving college here, but it has faded from our memory. So when I became president, this is what I had to overcome. First of all, I had to overcome ignorance about what an HBCU was. I got excited and said, you know what? Simmons has never closed as a university, as a college. Had Simmons closed as a college one day, we would be ineligible for HBCU status. But because we came into existence in 1879, prior to 1965, we were eligible for HBCU status. I will never forget when I was invited to speak at NAFIO, once Simmons had become accredited, and they said, we will have Kevin Cosby speak, president of Simmons College of Kentucky. And everyone was looking around saying, who is Simmons? Who is Simmons? Who is Simmons? Well, we're the institution that the slaves built. We're the institutions that Baptist churches gave nickels and dimes to that would not close. We're the institution that University of Louisville basically destroyed in 1930 when they took over our campus. We're the institution that after 77 years of being exiled from that campus was able to return back to the campus that slaves built. Those buildings on 7th and Kentucky Street are all built by the hands of enslaved people. So when I became president and I was trying to get support, there were so many people who said, number one, what is an HBCU? And I don't have enough time in my life or in multiple lifetimes to help our city understand what an HBCU is, why HBCUs are valuable. And then once I finally explained what an HBCU was, then I had to overcome another obstacle, which Dr. Brown alluded to. And that is, first of all, what is an HBCU? Cool, I get it, it's a Black college. And then the second obstacle was this: why do we need an HBCU? I mean, I understand why there was a need for an HBCU prior to 1954, but our kids can go to Spalding, they can go to University of Louisville, they can go to University of Kentucky, they can go to Bellarmine. Why do we need that? We're not, why, that was during a time of segregation. And I don't think we've ever really left segregation, to be honest. But based on the data and how Black kids do in HBCUs compared to PWIs, predominantly white institutions, from a Black perspective, the question should not be, why do we need HBCUs? The question is, why do we need PWIs? Why do we need predominantly white institutions as it relates to Black kids? Because Black kids fare better, achieve more, go further as a result of attending a historically Black college and university. And our city is indeed blessed. As Dr. Brown said, Simmons is the last HBCU in America. In fact, there has not been a college, Black college, that probably has received the designation of HBCUs except Simmons. That's because it hasn't closed. And there will never be another HBCU. And so to have this blessing, to have this institution that is already bringing millions of dollars into our city, has the potential of bringing the Black intellectual capital that this city needs for economic development and diversity, and the infusion of dollars that come to this city just because of Title III funds and dollars that are dedicated exclusively to HBCUs. You cannot name me one other institution, Black-led institution, private Black-led institution in the state of Kentucky that has more potential than Simmons College in terms of impacting our city and our state. So the question is, with all of this potential, especially since we have been economically excluded for decades and centuries, it just seems to me that if this city, our state, and I think our governor is already there, is really serious about impacting Black kids, then there would be millions and millions and millions of dollars that would be dedicated to institutions like Kentucky State and Simmons. And it is the just thing to do because we have been excluded for so many years. And if you're really serious about making an impact in the Black community, then you're going to say, look, regardless of what we give to the other colleges and universities around the Commonwealth, we are going to make sure that first, we're going to infuse money into these Black institutions to help Black kids achieve. And that's the only way they're going to achieve. Those closest to the problems are closest to the solutions. As Dr. Brown said, we're going to do a lot of asset mapping together. And asset mapping simply says that that you got to take those people who are close to the problem to fix it. We fix it, and others have to fund it because we don't have the resources. And let me say this: I do not put my head down, and I do not apologize for the fact that HBCUs across this country do not have the endowments of the predominantly white institutions. And they love to isolate. You know, one of the things they love to do is they would say, no, you at Simmons need to get yourselves together. Or you at Simmons, you know, no one wants to support you, as though it's just something unique to Simmons. It is white supremacy, and all HBCUs, all Black institutions face the same problem of being excluded from resources. That's what it means. That's all racism is, by the way. Racism is the maldistribution of resources controlled by whites for the benefit of whites. The real tragedy of racism is not simply what white people have done to Blacks, but is what they do for each other routinely that they will not do for Black people. So now is the time. You've got this collaboration. There's a great need. The governor is behind us, and now is the time for philanthropy and all of these organizations, corporate Kentucky, to infuse these institutions, these two institutions, with much needed capital.
Well, looks like we are running over just a little bit, but I want to end with this last question to kind of bring everything home. But real quick, I will insert Dr. Cosby and Dr. Brown that Dr. Marty Polio, the superintendent for Jefferson County Public Schools, also noted that having a Black teacher in the classroom is not only beneficial to Black students, but also for white students as well. As we know now more than ever, optics are important. Why is now more important, very necessary, to see this Black united front? Simmons College, Kentucky State University. Dr. Christopher Brown, I'll let you start off and ending with that, answering that question.
Certainly, I want to do 2 parts. One, also pick up on your comment from Dr. Polio. I worked on the Supreme Court amicus brief for Gratz and Grutter, as well as the Michigan case. And the underlying diversity argument that Michigan used in that affirmative action case was that diversity at Michigan, in fact, benefited the white population. And so that's, in fact, the underlying purpose of that diversity, because it helps their educational mission, and that was their case. As to your final question and comment on a united front, well, certainly, I think Martin King said it best, that the test or the measure, it's appeared both ways, if a man is not where he sits or in times of comfort and convenience, but where he stands in times of challenge and controversy. And so certainly there are many things on which any groups or two institutions can disagree on. But the ability of those groups at a time of need to find areas of agreement, things that they can agree on and work together serve to benefit us all. In fact, the definition of synergy is when two or more forces unite to achieve an outcome that neither of the forces could have achieved individually. And so I think that is the purpose of this collaboration, so that we can together do something for the Commonwealth that neither of us could do independently.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Cosby, I'll let you close us out.
Well, first of all, I'm excited about the future. I want to thank God for sending my colleague both in ministry and in higher education, Dr. Christopher Brown. This is not accidental, this is providential. I believe the hand of God is upon this. And not only are we presidents and pastors, but we also belong to the same Baptist Convention, the National Baptist Convention of America International. So this is what the Greeks call a Kairos moment.
Yeah.
And the Greek god Kairos, if you get a picture of him, he has wings on his feet. He has hair in the front of his head, but he has no hair in the back of his head. And the symbolism of Kairos is simply this: that image means the wings on his feet means that opportunities sometimes move with ambulatory speed. Secondly, that the hair on the front of his head means that when it comes, you must seize the opportunity, because once it passes, there's no hair on the back of his head and you cannot grab it once it passes. We have an opportunity to do something in the city of Louisville and throughout the state of Kentucky that will make a difference. This is a historic Zoom meeting, first of all, because it's the first time that two Black presidents have engaged in a dialogue on Zoom. But it's historic for another reason. I don't think that, and our school is 141 years old, and basically Kentucky State is basically the same age. But I don't think that there's been a time when two presidents have committed together to work together, to get our two institutions together for the sake of our people who are in desperate need of these institutions. The only unknown variable is this: will those who have the resources get behind it? I will say this, that Dr. Brown is right. It's interesting that President Trump has infused a lot of money into HBCUs, sometimes more than Democratic presidents. But President Biden is pledging, I heard, like $70 billion to HBCUs and minority serving institutions. I wish he would just do it for HBCUs, because institutionally, HBCUs are the ones that need those monies. but if Biden is elected and those monies come in, and if the corporate state, the corporate community and the philanthropic community really gets behind these institutions, you will see transformative change in the city of Louisville and throughout the state of Kentucky. And I am excited about what the future holds.
Wow. And I know that we all are excited about what is about to happen. And so the question was posed, is a Black United Front possible? Here today, you see it. Yes, it is. And we are excited about the future. Dr. Christopher Brown, thank you so much for joining us today in this conversation on the West Louisville Forum. Dr. Cosby, we thank you so much for you creating this platform for this conversation to be held. And we thank you, each and every one of you that tune in and that has tuned in every other week to get this knowledge, get this wisdom, and also for supporting your HBCUs. So thank you so much for tuning into the West Louisville Forum. Thanks so much to Park Community Credit Union, I'm sorry, Park Community Credit Union for being our sponsor.
And Crystal, may I say this about Park Community Credit Union?
Yes.
Park Community Credit Union has done an outstanding job, I know, in supporting Simmons College.
Absolutely.
They have been a friend to Simmons College. And I saw when Dr. Brown came to the 4th Street campus, our administration building, on Monday, that he was driving this SUV that was donated by Park Community Credit Union. And I got to talk to the president of Park Community Credit Union. I got I had some sanctified envy. I said, look at that brother's vehicle. So Park, you are our friend. We love you. And thank you for all you've done. But Simmons would look awful good in one of those vehicles, Park.
And let me say, Park is the official credit union of Kentucky State. They have been dynamic partners, not just with resource support, but access to student training and development and job opportunities and financial planning. It's just an excellent resource for the Commonwealth.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Von Purdy, you heard that. Call and talk and see about getting our president a vehicle. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for tuning into the West Louisville Forum, Solutions for Urban America.
Awesome.
Thank you. Bless you.